Hey everyone. Thank you for joining us for the OSS AI Summit, Building with LangChain. My name is Anna. I'll be your producer for this session. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our moderators to answer. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our hosts for today. Thank you so much for joining.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. And we are super excited to have you here for this inaugural OSS AI Summit event. We're going to be talking today about LangChain and how we can build AI solutions with it. And we'll have about 2.5 hours or so of content for you. So a lot of great stuff lined up. My name is Dan Wallin. I work in cloud advocacy at Microsoft, and I also have my esteemed colleague, Julia, here with me. So do you want to introduce yourself, Julia?
Yeah, of course, Dan. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia, and I work with Dan here in the JavaScript advocacy team, and I'm super excited for today's event. Before we start, where is everyone joining us from? So please do take a quick second, drop in a hi on the chat, and let us know where you're tuning in from. I see we have folks from Ukraine, from India, from France. We do love to see the global representation that we have in this event. While you do all that, then what do we have lined up for today's event?
Excellent question. We have a lot of good stuff is the answer. So in all seriousness, we do have a lot of good stuff, a lot of great demos for you. So we're going to start things off with Marlene and Johan, and they're going to be talking about LangChain V1. So whether you're new to LangChain or you've actually used it before, they'll have a lot of great content about agents and tools and beyond that even. And then we're going to have a special guest on as well. So Marlene, I'll let Marlene introduce our guest, but she's going to have a fireside chat talking about agents in the real world and also a demonstration there as well. So Julia, we have even more of those. So walk us through the next thing.
Absolutely. So right after the fireside chat, we'll have 2 demos showing agents and MCP in action. So if you have any questions on those topics, this is the session for you. And then to wrap things up, we'll have a special bonus just for you, where we'll bring in some incredible folks from the LangChain team for a live Q&A. So as you see, we have quite a lot to cover, so we hope that you are as excited as we are for this event. Now, if you have any questions along the way, drop them on the chat and we'll address as many as possible. Without wasting any more time, let's jump into our first session. Marlene, Johan, welcome on stage and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us, but my name is Marlene, and today Johan and I are going to be talking to you about LangChain V1. We're going to be explaining a bit about the basics around building agents, tools, and beyond that. So just before we get started, we thought we'd introduce ourselves. I'll start with myself. My name is Marlene. I'm a senior developer advocate on the Python on Azure team here at Microsoft. I actually focus a lot on open source, and I particularly like LangChain and have been doing a lot to try and help maintain the Azure libraries on the Python side. So Johan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Marlene, and hey, everyone. So yeah, because we'll be talking about AI today, especially about LangChain, but let's face it, not everything is about Python. So here I am. So my name is Johan, and I'm from the JavaScript advocacy team here at Microsoft. And I'm here also to represent the JavaScript side of LangChain. So in this session, you'll see Python, of course, but also JavaScript demos. So yeah, you'll get something for everyone.
For both, 100%. We love both Python and JavaScript, at least on this team on the stream today. So yeah, just before we get started, for those of you who are not familiar with what LangChain is, so LangChain is actually, there's a company called LangChain, and that company has created mainly 2 open source projects. One of the open source projects is called LangChain, one is called LangGraph. And the main open source project, which is LangChain, is an open source framework that is used for building LLM-powered applications. And one of the huge advantages of using LangChain is that it provides high-level abstractions. So whether you're working with LLMs directly, maybe you want to switch out models, or you're trying to build out an agent and want to add things like memory and things like that, LangChain is going to be great for that because it provides a unified, simple interface to do that. Another thing is that it bridges the gap between data and reasoning. So if you have data, say, for example, you have data in Azure stored somewhere, and you want LLMs to reason over that data, LangChain is a great way to do that. They have tons of integrations to allow you to build in the same framework with LangChain. And then a final thing I'll point out is that the LangChain community is really active. I mentioned that it's an open source framework, so the open source community is quite large. And so we actively at Microsoft contribute quite a lot to the code, and we try to participate in the community. So if you have questions or need help with stuff, there's an amazing Slack community that you can join as well. So that's all, I would say, the main 4 things we want to highlight about LangChain.
Yeah, just to give you like a quick overview of the kind of abstraction that you'll find in the framework. So let's have a look at some of the few main components that we have. So first, let's start with the models. So models may have different formats, especially for the input, output, and the way you communicate with the model through messages. And when the models needs to call some tools and parse the results, different models, different providers have different formats. But with LangChain, you don't have to care about that because you're all provided with one format that is provided by LangChain. So you get an abstraction. It's easy to switch from different providers. It's easy to switch from local to cloud models. And yeah, for developers, it's really like a time saver.
Yeah.
And nowadays, like you probably know if you're attending this live stream, but everything is about agents. And LangChain provides core abstraction also to make it easy to compose and extend your own agents. So they introduce the concepts also of middleware to provide like storage facilities. Yeah, we'll detail that in a bit to see what kind of options you have for agents, for memory and stuff. We have some cool demo for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, finally, as agents get more autonomy, it's even more important also to know what they're doing because, you know, like an agent run can take sometimes minutes, sometimes hours. So being able to stream the updates in real time is really crucial if you want to build like a good user experience around like your agentic workflows. So there's, of course, a lot more to LangChain than just these components. It's just like the core ones. And
100%.
yeah, if you've previously used LangChain like a long time ago, and yeah, by long time, I mean, Marlene, you might be agree with that, but it might just mean like a few months ago.
Yeah.
Like the recent V1 has literally like revamped everything. So while the previous components are still there, the new focus is all about like agents.
Agents, yeah. 100%. So just like Johan was saying, there's a huge focus now when LangChain has released LangChain version 1. So V1 of LangChain has, like Johan mentioned, a big focus on agents. And part of that is that we have a standard agentic loop. And the way you would access that is using this create agent method, and that allows you to quickly have an abstraction that you can use to be able to create agents. And we're going to see some demos in Python and JavaScript in a second about what that looks like. The other thing is that you have common conversational agents. So regardless of what LLM you're using, you'll have a chat, maybe a chat OpenAI interface that you can use to be able to quickly create these conversational agents. So LangChain has that in V1. And then it's very much simple and higher level. So there was a little bit of complexity in V1, in the previous version of LangChain before V1, where people were using chains sometimes, and it was a little bit confusing. I think with V1, we've gotten a lot of, it's simpler, it's a little bit easier to work with, and more high level. So we like that. Johan, do you want to talk about LangGraph?
Yeah, sure. You mentioned that in the beginning. So LangChain and LangGraph are part of like the bigger LangChain ecosystem, as we can call it. And yeah, while LangChain focus on getting you started very quickly with the high-level abstraction and the simple create agent function, LangGraph on the other side allows you like to go really deeper in the workflow customization. They provide you like all the low-level control that you need for more complex use case that you may want if you're doing like some automation, or if you have like a precise idea of what kind of workflow that you're building. Basically, it gives you like the full control to create like your own graph, hence the name, with your agents.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do want to show some demos before we talk about middleware. We do want to show a simple demo in both Python and in JavaScript for you to see exactly how you can build out agents. So maybe Johan, you can go ahead with JavaScript, and for a change, we can start with JavaScript with a simple basic example of building an agent.
Yes, that's a good idea. Let's start with JavaScript for a change. So time to show some code now. Maybe we can switch to my screen for that. Okay. So yeah, you'll see that LangChain, Python, and JavaScript have very similar concepts. So yeah, for this simple agent demo, I wanted to create like something just to humor me, like to start the day on a nice touch. And something I like for that is like, you know, who doesn't like a good Chuck Norris jokes for that? So we have this API, and I'm just building like a simple tool around that. So with LangChain, you have this like tool function. So this is the handler of my tool. Just I take like a keyword as a parameter and use just a simple HTTP API call to get some jokes that match that keyword. And by defining a tool, you need to give it like a name. So I'm calling it get jokes. I'm giving a description so the LLM knows how to use this tool. And I can even specify like a schema. So this is the format of the parameters that the LLM will be able to pass on to the tool. So, okay, once you have your tool creating the agents, it has never been easier since like LangChain V1. So as Marlene mentioned, we have this create agent function where you can specify the model. And you've seen, if you used LangChain before, this new thing. Basically, you can just set the provider and which model you want to use, given that you have like the correct environment variable. So I have like my .env file defined somewhere with how to connect to Azure, but you can very easily define which model you want to use. It's very easy, thanks to that, to switch between, for example, local models to like cloud models. Then I specify which tool I pass on to my agent. So the get jokes tool I just defined, and then my system prompt. So for this use case, okay, it's just like a humor assistant to give me a jokes based on what I want to hear. So now let's call our agent, and I'm calling it with like a very simple request. I want to laugh with something about cats. So let's just run it and see what it came with. So here I'm just printing like the raw output of my agent. So you can see here my request, make me laugh with cats. First thing, the LLM response is like a tool calling. So it's correctly assess that I want to call my get jokes tool. So okay, it called get jokes with the keyword cats. We should get like, this is the API answer. So it's raw JSON coming from the Chuck Norris API. And then at the end, you get the joke that the LLM selected for me, that's like a good cat themed jokes. So, okay, nice. Just a few lines of code to define like your very first agent. And of course, you can really go deeper from that.
Yeah.
You want to switch to Python, Marlene, now?
Yes, let's go ahead and switch to Python and look at a basic example from there. But yeah, in Python, it's also very similar to what we saw. I don't have a Chuck Norris joke, but in a very similar way, in Python for LangChain with Azure, you have two options to be able to actually work with it. So on one hand, you can go ahead and pip install LangChain OpenAI, or you can use other Azure specific model package called LangChain Azure AI. So you have the option to choose one of those two. In the first example, I'm going to show us what it looks like to create an agent with OpenAI, LangChain OpenAI. So the first thing we're doing is we're just getting a base URL. So this URL, I would get it from Azure Foundry. So Microsoft Foundry is what it's called now. And basically, I would take this base URL, I would get my token, or you can use an API key, and we'd pass it. We want to instantiate our LLM here. So this is going to create an instance of GPT 4.1. And we also want to create, like Johan mentioned, you can pass through tools to be able to allow the agent to do something. So for example, in this case, we want the agent to, whenever it asked a question about numbers and to add numbers, it should use the addition tool. So all the addition tool does is it adds two numbers, and the LLM will read that description and will use that tool if it thinks it's necessary. And then we have this create agent method. So we've imported that from LangChain agents. And we passing through the LLM that we've created, which is GPT 4.1. We are also passing through a list of tools. So the only tool we have is this Python function that's an addition tool. And then we're telling it that you're a helpful assistant. We wanted to help us in this case. And then we are going to do some streaming. And to be able to do that streaming, I'm also going to be showing you something that's kind of new in LangChain, which is called content blocks, which is just a clearer way for us to see the response from our messages. So to be able to run this, we just need to run Python basic agent, which is my file, and that will run the code. And so it's running the code that we just saw here. And what we can see is that we've asked the question to the LLM. We've sent in the question, add 2 + 2 to the agent. And then what is returned to us in our terminal here, once we've run that code, is we can see that it shows in different steps. The first step is that the model has decided, it's made a decision as an agent that it's going to use the tool, the addition tool, to add 2 + 2. Because our question was, what is 2 + 2? And then the tool that's called the addition tool, which is the function is called, and then it just gives us in return the 4. And we can see the step here is the tool step. And then finally, the model gives us the final answer, which is 2 + 2 = 4. And that was all the code that we needed to be able to have the agent run. So this is basically how you would set up an AI agent. A very simple way to do it with Python is really just using this create agent method that they have that's new in LangChain v1. I also want to talk a little bit about middleware. So I'm just going to switch to, sorry about my...
Oh, that's a lot of icons.
A lot of icons, I'm sorry. Ignore that. But we have middleware is new in v1 as well. And these are customizable hooks in the agent loop for dynamic control. So it allows you to be able to send through any different API, any function that you have that you wanted to do something before or after the LLM call in the loop with the agent. So there's a couple of built-in middlewares that LangChain provides. The first is human in the loop that we really like, and these are some of the built-in ones. And this allows a user to be able to control which tools that the agent has to ask for permission to use. And we'll see an example of that. The second is a summarization tool. So you can condense information and you can run that. And another one is as well is this redaction middleware as well, where you can detect sensitive data. So all of these are sort of tools that you can plug in at certain points in the loop for the agent to run before it does stuff. So let's take a look at what that looks like again in the code. So we have this middleware file, and in the middleware here, we are defining two tools. So we're defining a send email tool and a read email tool. So you can imagine if I'm just, playing around with the LLMs and I don't really mind, maybe I'm sending emails to my mom, I don't really mind what the agent is doing. But if I decide that I want to use the send email tool where I want the LLM, the agent itself, to send emails on my behalf, I want to be able to read the email before the agent sends it and approve whether or not the email looks good to me. And so for that, we are going to use LangChain's human-in-the-loop middleware. And what this allows us to do is we're, again, using that create agent method. Very similar, we're sending through the tools that we want. We have the read email tool and the send email tool, and we're telling it to interrupt. So whenever it sees the send email tool is about to be called, it should interrupt and stop and require approval from a human. So we can go ahead and run that. Another thing to point out is that we are going to be using this in-memory saver, and it's a checkpointer which will just save the information we've had so far before the interrupt, so that when the interrupt happens, it can continue right from where it left off and no information is going to be lost. So it saves it temporarily. So let's actually run this code and see what it looks like. I'm going to pass to the agent, I'm going to say, please send an email to Johan with the subject meeting, and the body should be let's meet at 10 a.m. So I expected the agent to see that it should, to send this email, it should use the send email tool, and it should interrupt and ask for permission to do that. So let's go ahead and use that. We will just run Python middleware.py. And when that runs, you'll see it immediately interrupts and it says human approval required, send email tool, and then it wants approval to be able to execute and send this email. And it's saying the allowed decisions are approve, edit, or reject. So I think this looks good. So I would say yes, and I would want it to go ahead and use the send email tool. And it said, your email has been sent to Johan. So this is a great way to use an option like middleware. Johan, do you want to keep going with the next part? Let me maybe go back to the slides. Okay.
Sure. Before moving on to the deep agent, I see that we have some question in the chat that we can answer. First, about like all the code example that we are showing, the slides, basically all the content that you will see during the conference, you can access that in the repo using the link that you can see in the bottom of the slide, the aka.ms/OSS AI Summit. We'll also show like a QR code at the end, but basically you get all the example, resource, and links in this repo. So we'll show it multiple times. So just in case, if you want to get access to whatever we are presenting, you'll get it. I see that we also have a question regarding orchestration of multiple agents. This is like the current demo that we'll see. So we can move on to that. So as basically, sorry. Going down, with the progress that we've seen with Agentic AI, basically we're leaning more and more towards like long-running autonomous agents. Deep Agents is a new tool that's based on LangChain and LangGraph that provides more autonomy and persistence to these agents. So it has been heavily inspired, if I remember well, Marlene, from Cloud Code approach. But they tweaked it. I think they reused maybe some parts of the system prompt, but tweaked it for like more general purpose agents. And yeah, the nice thing is that it comes out of the box with like a lot of built-in extra capabilities. Like first, persistent memory. So it can store and share knowledge across like multiple runs of the agents. It gets file system access also to allow reading and writing files. Of course, with sandboxing, just to make sure it doesn't remove like anything else that you don't want on your file system. We know that like sometimes LLM wants to wipe like all database. So yeah, a bit of sandboxing never hurts. It also includes like planning. It has like an integrated planner, but also a to-do list tool that's built into, so it can like move on through multiple tasks and plan and progress as well. And yeah, it's also well suited for like scenarios where you want multiple sub-agents that interacts with each other toward like a common goal. And yeah, I believe this is time for the demo.
Yes, we have a very exciting demo that's coming up with Deep Agents. And Deep Agents is probably one of the packages that LangChain seems most excited about at the moment. So
can we switch maybe from my screen?
Yes.
So we can show what's going on. Or not.
Yeah, hopefully we will switch screens. One thing we'll mention is that if you are watching, you can feel free to use the hashtag. We're using the hashtag OSS AI Summit, and you can share what you're doing with us or what you're enjoying during the stream.
Okay, could we show some JavaScript now from my screen? Maybe.
Yes, we need to switch screens.
Just in case. Maybe there is some difficulties in the studio. This is live. This is why. In the meantime, maybe we can look through some other question. I've seen. Oh,
yeah.
Here is my screen. I can still
Perfect.
take the time now that I've started to answer. I've seen one question about the gate jog tools. If you look closely, you can see that when creating the agent, whether it's Python and JavaScript, you can pass on an array of tools. So if you have like multiple tools, basically the LLM will orchestrate and decide which tool to call. So this is why you need like good description if you have multiple tools, so it knows which one it should call given like a specific task, and it can iterate calling like a few different tools if you have multiple one, and it will decide also when it has like enough data to provide like an answer out of, to complete the current task that you have assigned. So now it's time to switch to my favorite demo about like deep agents. So something I like about conference, I don't know about you, but something I always look for is stickers. And we wanted to have some stickers for this event. So right now we don't have it printed, but I'll show you how I came up with like a few example designs. Maybe you can reuse this example. And this is all built using deep agents. So what I wanted to do is given like a conference theme. So this is the theme of this very one event, OSS AI Summit building with LangChain. I want my agent to generate like to brainstorm and generate a few stickers ideas. So let's say 3 ideas for now. And for each of these stickers idea, I want to generate different design variation. So I can choose which one could be the best. So I want it to generate it on my file system. So I'm giving it like a folder, and I want the generate files to be generated in this markdown file. So now switch on to the prompt for my agents. So this is my main agent, the supervisor one. So what I'm saying in there is, okay, it's managing like a creative agency of different agents. And basically the first task will be to generate the list of ideas for the stickers. So if there's one already, like if the file already exists, you can use it, whether it allows you, if you want, for example, to do multiple runs and tweaks the files yourself. Otherwise, it calls like the sticker idea agent to generate the list of the stickers and save to the file. Once we have like the list of sticker ideas, I just explicitly tell it to call like the artist agent that will generate the actual sticker design. And then once we have like all the design, I want like a preview of everything that was generated. So I just ask it to generate like an index.html file so I can have a preview of everything. So now moving on, I have like the prompt for my idea agents. So basically tell it what I want. I want like a specific number of ideas. I give it like an example of the output format. So like some text, maybe some idea of the visual, but then for the design, it will be handled by the artist designer prompt. So again, this one is a bit more extensive. Not only it will generate the design, but it will create the prompt for the image model to generate it, because I'm bad at prompts, so it can all generate it by itself. So yeah, saying that's okay, generate the prompt with a few like rules to respect, because I want stickers that can be printed. I want like a specific number of design. And then let's move on to how we created this setup. So we need one tool, the one that creates the images. So I defined my very own tool based like OpenAI SDK in there. So basically just sending in a prompt and a file name, and it will generate the image and save it using my file name. So, okay, I have this create image tool, and then I'm defining all my agents. So the idea agent using the prompt that we've seen, the sticker artist agent using, again, the prompt that we've seen and the create image tool, and then the supervisor. So instead, like we did with the simple agent that we've seen in the introduction, we call create agents. So doesn't get more complicated than calling create deep agent this time. Again, with the model, the prompts, my sub-agents, so the two sub-agents that I've just defined. And then for the backend, this is the persistence. So I needed to be able to access the file system. So again, this is provided by LangChain, saying where it can, which subfolder it can access. And virtual mode basically enables the sandboxing. So I cannot access anything in my file system that's outside of this folder. Yeah, that's it. And then just some logs to see how it runs. So it takes a long time. So I've run this just before, so we don't have to wait. And basically, it generated like this sticker folder with like this markdown file and the list of ideas that we have, like 3 ideas, a few of the stickers with the preview. So let's just switch to the preview. And this is what I got. It basically took like 5 minutes to generate these stickers. Yeah. And,
they look so great.
This is the kind of thing that you can do with like a deep agent. So you've seen that what I've mostly put in my code is prompts. So yeah, with this kind of thing, of course, I made an experiment running. So this is by the way, the repo that you have access to with all the example. And in this repo also, I made an example running this agent with like generating dozens of ideas and designs, and I basically extracted this sticker board. So if you want, we don't have the stickers yet, but if you want to like steal some of these ideas for the stickers and print them yourself, feel free to head out to the repo. It's all in there. And I think this is the kind of thing that it all generated by itself. So I don't take any credit for all of this.
Yeah, and they're super creative and cool. I think we can switch back to my screen as well, because I think we are at time with our section. We do want to mention, is my screen sharing? Hopefully my screen is sharing. But we do want to mention that we have some amazing courses available. If you are learning LangChain right now and you're interested in learning in JavaScript or Python, we have a LangChain for Beginners course. And we are also offering, this is not part of the LangChain company and organization, but there's the LangChain for J. So for Java's developers, we also have a LangChain for J beginner course. So all of these 3 courses are available at the link on the screen. It's AKA MS. This is the link. If you want to grab any of the resources we showed, whether that's the code or the LangChain for Beginners classes, please go ahead and visit that link or get the QR code as well. So we'll keep sharing this throughout as well. But yeah, thank you for listening to our talk.
Well, all right. Thank you so much, Marlene and Johan. Excellent way to kick things off. Great demo. There's been a ton of great questions in the chat as well. So thank you, everyone, for contributing there and kind of talking about the different scenarios. So really great to see how LangChain simplifies, the different aspects of these agentic AI apps. And we're going to be covering a lot more about agents throughout the session. So stick with us because we have even more cool stuff coming up. Now, I want to just briefly mention it because Marlene has already shown it, but we have this LangChain JS for Beginners, which is TypeScript based, LangChain for Beginners, which is Python. And then she also mentioned we have a new LangChain for J for Beginners. And you can either scan the QR code or go to the link that was mentioned and get to that. So, Julia, we have more, though. What's up next?
Yeah, Dan. So next up, we're going to bring back Marlene together with a special guest, Rati or Rati. Please confirm if I'm pronouncing your name right, but we'll bring them back for a fireside chat on getting AI agents out in the real world. So Marlene, Rati, over to you.
Amazing. Hi again, everyone. Hi, Rati.
Hi, Marlene.
Hi, everyone. So I am so excited to have Rati on the stream today. Rati and I just want to give some context. So Rati and I were best friends in high school, like the best friends. And we were not doing tech at the time. So it's so fun to have her on. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself? We'd love to know a bit more about you.
Yeah, it's funny because I ended up studying software engineering, but like when I look at all the people in my class, I didn't like code when I was a young teenager. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoyed everything from like business, art, and the sciences, but ended up in software engineering and absolutely loved it. But a bit more about me. So I've been in tech basically my whole career. Started as a software engineer and then shifted into product. So I don't know if that's moving to the dark side or not.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've always been a true builder at heart. So even with the products that I focused on, it's either been platform, orchestration, dev tooling, or working on products that are for developers. And then most recently, in the past 6 years, I've been working at Intercom, which has been building products for businesses to communicate with their customers. And I am currently the director of product in our AI group, and we've been building out Fin.ai or Fin for the past 3 years. And that's been an exciting journey. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and talking to you.
Yay. Very excited. And yeah, you've had an amazing journey. And I had to talk to you because I have heard so much about Fin. And, you know, this is something that we wanted to make sure was a part of this summit because we have so many people who are maybe building agents, but we don't see as many great examples of agents out in the real world. So could you tell us a little bit about Fin? I know you've been directing product for Fin for a while now. Could you tell us a little bit about Fin as a product?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. Building agents is both really easy and really hard at the same time. So I'll give a bit of history on Intercom, which gives context around Fin. So Intercom as a platform is always focused on helping businesses communicate with their customers. And before we saw the big leap with GPT 3.5, we always had an in-house, what we call the answer bot. And it was using machine learning to help to automate questions, but it just never was quite right. It took a lot of training for customers to get it up and running. And yes, it would help automate conversation, but it never quite hit it. But when GPT 3.5 launched, it was just like an immediate moment for our entire business. We're like, oh, something's changed. And I think it helped that we had an in-house ML AI team that also helped us recognize like, no, this is a significant change that's happened. And we immediately went into like problem space. It's always been a key part of how we operate at Intercom is not so much starting with the solution, which is not a bad place to start, but it was really like, hey, we know this technology exists. What problem which should we go after solving here? And over the next few months, GPT-4 was on the horizon. We managed to get early access to it. And we were like, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to really make a step change in automating those conversations at the top of the funnel and having more personalized conversations at scale. And so that's where Fin started, was really thinking through about how do we help solve this existing problem forever, but there's a new technology that helps us to do it much better and in a much easier way that's more accessible to more businesses.
That's amazing. Wow, that's fantastic. So Fin, if there, you know, you talked a little bit about how you already had a chatbot inside of Intercom even before, and you were already using machine learning. You have already, there's so many customers that are right now using Fin in their companies. What would you say has been the reaction to Fin? Has it been easy to get people to adopt it? What does it look like for a new company to adopt Fin as a product that they want to use?
Yeah, I feel like AI world is light speed, because although it's been nearly like 2.5, 3 years since we launched Fin, it feels like every 6 months there's a change in customers' perception and the fears they have. I'd say when we initially launched, there was a bunch of excitement because there was a lot of anticipation, excitement in the industry of like, they believe something is, I mean, people would play around with GPT at the time and like make poems, and they're like, well, if it can do this, what can it do for my support team? So there's a lot of excitement, but equally a lot of fear and lack of understanding of how much to trust this agent. And if I look at right now, a lot of the hurdles of adoption are less, I think more of our industry, especially our customer being in the service space or customer facing teams, there's a lot more understanding of what's possible, and it becomes more of a like org transformation of where do you want this agent to be available for your customers, and how much of access do you want to have in your conversations. And what I mean by that is, I find that customers, and maybe part of it is fear and control of like, maybe they don't want it to handle any billing conversations because they don't believe it can handle it just as much. And maybe that's the most consistent fear I've seen.
Yeah,
right. Encouraging customers to try. And then all the operational bits. It's like AI has removed some of the repetition or the difficulty that was there previously with different forms of automation or how teams worked, but it's also created a bunch of new roles. Now you're like, oh wait, I need a bigger content team. I need someone to actually think about the conversation design. I need someone to manage like looking at the insights and reporting. So you almost like are changing a business's way of operating with this new technology.
Yeah, wow. And I totally, and yeah, that makes so much sense. And it also makes sense about the fears people would have, even when it's still a pretty new technology. Something I also would want to ask, kind of based off of that, is where have you seen Fin shining the most, or what are the use cases that you're seeing that are like customers are like, this is amazing, Fin is incredible at this? Is it usually just those customer service conversations where it's just back and forth, or what does it typically a really amazing use case people use?
Oh, I mean, our base and core where we started Fin was really in helping customers resolve those service, almost reactive questions that come in when someone is stuck somewhere, has an issue, and then also the complex issues that come in. So not just like, hey, how do I unlock my password and answering it back, but really going deep into what we call our procedures model, for example, really step-by-step walking through, disambiguating with the customer, connecting to separate systems, pulling in personalized information. So Fin really shines there. But what's both been, I think initially surprised us, but also as we've formed our vision as a company of where we see Fin is also, and seeing what our customers are using Fin for, is how well it works beyond support conversations. And so AI is a very convergent force. And especially with when you think about a customer-facing tool or even customer-facing roles, a lot of the core of the skill you're using to interact with customers is deeply understanding the knowledge and applying it appropriately based on the stage of the end user you're talking to. And it's been fascinating to see how well Fin can adjust to different parts of the life cycle and help drive different goals. And right now, one of the main focuses we're doing at the company is shifting from just Fin being a service agent, but to handle things like sales conversations. So a lot of the base technology is quite similar, but actually we've had to explore different AI architectures to be able to drive a sales conversation versus a service conversation.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I love to see that. And I think the sales part is something that I think is definitely coming, especially with the models developing and getting better and becoming more agentic and can use tools and things like that. Something from a product perspective, how are you balancing the industry? AI as an industry is moving so quickly, and there's always something new. There's a new model, there's a new tool or whatever it is. But from a product perspective, how do you balance what to actually include in a product versus what to leave out, especially with the industry changing so much? What do you tend to prioritize?
Yeah, I'd have to say, like, the way we do this road mapping and prioritization has completely shifted than we did it like 3 years ago, where I think it was much easier for, it depends, of course, where you worked, but it was much easier to make a roadmap for like 6 months to a year with like fuzziness in it. Versus now it feels like a lot of our road mapping might be 6 weeks to 3 months to 6 months away, because it depends on sometimes the new models that are releasing or whatever we see in the market going on that we'd want to build into our platform and Fin. And so we kind of, I'd say, look at it in two prongs of like, we of course have the big bets that we're making that have stayed true regardless of the shifts that we've seen in our technology, but we're also open and constantly experimenting. Like if a new model comes out, we're experimenting with it and seeing if we should include it in our stack, or if there's just, we're constantly sort of balancing both worlds and are always open to revisit what our roadmap looks like today and see if we need to shift and change anything. In some ways, I don't know if it's become, our roadmap has felt more stable lately, or if we've just been more used to the like,
that
we
exactly. Yeah, I understand that.
And we're open to experiment. I think one thing as well is like,
Yeah.
as much as us builders or product people are forming opinions and trying to make sense of where to go in the industry, it's the same for the customers we're building for. They're also trying to make sense of like, should I then build my own agent or should I buy an agent? What parts of my product should I build versus buy? And so this, I think one thing that I see it as like, it's almost like we're having a dance and a relationship with our customers, like understanding and also sometimes even educating on what parts make sense for them to build versus what makes sense for us to build ourselves. Yeah,
absolutely. That's fantastic. We just have a few more minutes or 2 more questions for you, Rati. The first one is, how do you evaluate how an agent is performing? How do you typically look at Finn's performance and see that it's doing well?
Yeah, that's one of the, there's a few different metrics and methods that we use to do that. But one of the key things that we landed on very early on of like, what's the North Star? How do we make sure, and with all the changes that we're doing, especially for the service agent, how do we make sure that we're building a high quality agent? And for us, the key governing metric that we go after is resolution rate. And so especially in the service world, that means that Finn is able to provide a meaningful response that helps the customer answer their question. And that's something that it's been interesting to see over the years. We've managed to increase our resolution rate 1% per month. So right now our average resolution rate is at 65%, which is a massive feat for a lot of businesses that are using Finn. But so that means like any changes we make, it's always a trade-off and a balance of like, oh, customers want more. For example, tone of voice feels like something that's like, oh yeah, we should give people flexibility in tone of voice. And how much flexibility do you give them when it impacts their resolution rate, for example? And so that's always a balance that we're constantly keeping. So we of course have different guardrail metrics that we use, but resolution rate is the main one that we are targeting towards and want to maintain. Then we also have our own manual evaluations that we do as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I would say the final question I would love to hear from you is, what advice do you have for people who are interested in the product space, who want to also be building AI agents in the real world, who want to have their products out there? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I'd focus on the key problem. And it sounds so simple of like, folks, I think there's a lot of agents out there in the world. And I'd encourage people to really stress the problem space that they're really solving for. Who's the customer you're going after? What's the key problem you're solving for them? And then validate really fast and really early. So if you've got 4 or 5 different customers that you've sort of identified in the space that you're going after, build closely with them. Make sure you have a good sense of like what they value. How do you measure that your agent is delivering on that value? And like push yourself to fail really fast. I'd say a lot of what I find is because the technology is moving really quickly, you want to make sure that you're at a place where you're working with your customers and validating if your agent that you're building is delivering that value as fast as you can. So that's one of my tidbits of advice, but of course people can always reach out and ask me for more.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rati. We really appreciate it. If you would like to learn more, please feel free to follow Rati. She's online on LinkedIn. And please follow Finn. It's a fantastic product. And we've really enjoyed having you on. So thank you, Rati. Really
thank you so much, Marlene. Appreciate it. Thanks.
So I am going to, before we move on to the next section, we have a couple of minutes to just go ahead and take a look at some examples. So I am going to share my screen again, and I want to start by sharing an example of some what we think you could build with LangChain. So there's a number of different agents that you're going to see for the rest of the summit, where the JavaScript team is going to show some agents with MCP and so on. And so I'm going to show 2 Python agents that we have that you can use. We have templates for these that are ready to go, and you can try them out today. The first is a Java sales assist analysis. And this is an agent that I built with LangChain. It's using MCP and MCP server that uses Postgres with some data from some SQL data and also embeddings. And then we are also using LangChain with OpenAI 4.1, and we are using the responses API. So basically, this is a sales analyst agent, and the agent, we can actually say hi, and it should tell us a little bit more about itself if the demo is working great. And so it's saying, hi, I'm Zava Sales. I'm with Zava Sales data. Can I assist you with Zava Sales data or product information today? So we can ask it questions about the information that's in our database. And this will connect. So with the agent that I built, I gave it a tool, which is this MCP server that has data in a database. So we can say, show sales by store for the financial year. And the sales agent, it's basically a sales agent for a DIY store. And then it has all of this data in a Postgres database that we then connect to the OpenAI Responses API. And the OpenAI Responses API is very cool because it has the ability to connect to MCP servers. It also has the ability to run code. So this is super cool. We see that the agent has generated a table for us with some sales data in it. We can also ask it to do things. So we can say, can you make a pie chart with this data? And what will happen is the agent in the backend is going to then run some Python code. So the OpenAI Responses API has a code interpreter tool that is going to take these numbers, take that data, and then turn that data, use that data, turn it into a into some sort of a file or something like that, maybe use a pandas data frame, and then turn that into a pie chart using Python code. So it's going to run this code interpreter in the backend with the Responses API. And you can see we get this nice looking pie chart. And there's so many things you can do with this. You can have it, the Responses API comes with web search tools. It comes with image generation. So all of that comes in just a very little amount of code. So the code that I have in this sample, and the sample, if you go ahead and you look for the LangChain agent Python in Azure samples, that sample is going to have this example here. And it's just going to be code very similar to what we saw at the beginning of this stream, but using the Responses API. So you get a lot of additional functionality, web search included as well. So this is one example. Now, the second example I want to show you is something called Agent Inbox. And this is an email assistant agent that I'm just going to run, check my emails for meeting invites. So I can explain it as it runs. And basically, this is an agent that I've created with Python and LangChain that uses the M365 MCP server. And what it does is it allows the LangChain agent to be able to, we can have it do a run and we can ask it questions. So my question was, check my emails for meeting invites. And then the agent has a search email tool. So it's going to search the email history. It's going to find the five top emails with some information about meetings. And it's told me that you have 2 meeting invites and all of these invites are on this date. And so it's using the tools that it has available for it to actually find information. Another thing we saw earlier about interrupts. So I can actually ask it, I can say, can you send an email to Johan to meet in NYC on the 25th of December? And then we'll send that. And what should happen is that the agent, again, we can see the activity that's happening here. The process is starting. The agent should be able to look at this email and it should see that actually it has a manage email tool. And in that manage email tool, it has sub-agent that can, it has a manage email sub-agent, and that sub-agent has a send email tool. But before it sends the email, it will have this interrupt and it will tell us that this action requires approval. So before it sends an email, it has to be approving we have to, as a user, accept that it should send that email and approve it so that we can send it. So this is an example of an email agent. Something I do want to point out, which I think is pretty cool about this, is that the agent is completely local. So this email agent runs using a small language model called Phi-4. It doesn't need the internet for the LLM part of this to run because it's using Foundry local. So this is a great example of an agent that really you don't need much setup for, and it pretty much just runs as it is. So those are two examples of agents that I wanted to share with you. The examples are at the link that we showed earlier, that Dan showed. So I would definitely encourage, if you are looking for some samples to try with LangChain and Python, either try out this local email agent, or you can try out, like I mentioned as well, the sales analyst agent as well. So yeah, thanks everyone. Let's maybe move on to the next part of the stream.
All right. We are
Cool.
ready to move on, Julia.
Yeah. Great conversation there from Marlene and Rati. I really enjoyed listening to your own experience, your own practical experience balancing out product design and road mapping with meeting customer needs in a time where we're seeing such great shifts in technology in a very short time. So that was really, really insightful. For the Java Sales Analyst demo that you've just seen from Marlene, you can access the code in the link that is provided on the screen and on the chat, or if you prefer, you can scan the QR code that you see right there. So I know we've seen so many questions come in on chat. Most have been addressed, but Dan, do you have any question that we might want to just read out loud to have a conversation on?
You know, one, Marlene, if you're still hanging around, and Anna, if it's possible to get her added.
Yes.
One was, because I don't know the answer to this one. You'd have to answer it. It said, what sort of front end does the Java agent have that you demo in there?
So it is using a JavaScript front end. So I actually got Copilot to help me with the front end.
Hey, that's all good.
So in the background, in the back, it's using Python. It's using a fast API backend, and the front, we are using React, I think, for the front end. So it is using JavaScript in the front.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. And sorry to put you on the spot there, but I figured, you'll probably.
Yeah, no, great. Fantastic, Kristen. And I also saw a comment from someone saying Foundry Local is awesome, which I completely agree. I think Foundry Local is 100% underutilized. That email agent is completely free to run. So it's free to run locally. And I just think that's amazing. And I don't think enough people are using Foundry Local. So please try out the local email agent as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, if you have any more questions for Marlene, she's still around, so please drop them on the chat and she'll definitely get right on them. So Dan, what do we have coming up next?
We have even more exciting stuff, Julia. Lots of fun stuff here. So Johan's actually going to be back joining us. And then we're also going to welcome Wasim. And they're going to be talking and providing some great information and some more demos around agents and MCP. I'm sure you've all heard about MCP. It's pretty much been all the rage these days. But they're going to show us how you can integrate MCP into LangChain JS scenarios. So with that, let me turn it over to Wasim and Johan.
Hey again, excited to be back with you, joined by Wasim this time, so we can talk more about agents with a session fully focused this time on JavaScript and LangChain JS.
Yeah, hi everyone, we're really excited to be here today. So I think, Johan, we're going to talk about MCP, right?
Yeah, specifically, we're going to diving into how the protocol is powering like the next generation of both single and multi-agent systems. Of course, all based still on LangChain JS. So yeah, you've already seen me in the first session. So I'm still working on the JavaScript advocacy team at Microsoft. So Wasim, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Wasim Shigam. I'm a cloud advocate here at Microsoft on the same team as Johan, JavaScript. We all love JavaScript. And yeah, today we're going to talk to you about MCP, LangChain, agents and agents again. So yeah, so the goal during this presentation is to move you beyond the simple hello world phase and get into kind of real world architectures. But first, we need to agree on the problem we are solving. We have these incredible LLMs, right? And the problem is that LLM in isolation is just a brain in a jar. It needs hands, it needs eyes, and it needs access to your data. So this is where MCP comes in, and Johan is going to tell us more about MCP.
Yes. So you may already have heard about like MCP. So it stands for Model Context Protocol, and it's kind of like the glue that allows to connect the tool providers with any AI agents. So it's an open source protocol that has quickly become like a standard for expanding the capabilities of LLMs. So let's explain that through like an example. Imagine that you have an e-commerce shop and you want an agent to propose, for example, new products for your inventory based on your current sales and report it into a Teams channel. So to be able to do that, it needs a few things. It needs to be able to access like the Git repository, so it can get like the database schema, so it knows how to talk to your data to your data and where to access things. It needs actual access to your database, so it can read like your current sales, maybe your most important customers, and decide what to do based on that. And if you want to connect it to Teams, it needs to be able to call the Teams API. So with MCP, basically you have no need to define what we've done with Marlene, like in the first session, to define your very own custom toolings. What you can do is plug in like existing MCP servers. For example, you can plug in the GitHub MCP server to access your repository. You can use the PostgreSQL existing MCP server to connect to your database. And of course, we also have like an MCP server for Teams that will be able to talk to your company channels directly. And MCP basically sits in the middle as the protocol to connect all these tools to like the AI agent of your choice. So it can be Copilot, it can be ChatGPT, it can be your own LangChain agent. That's basically what we'll see in the upcoming demos. So yeah, one of the most common questions that we usually have also with MCP is basically, do we have to rewrite like all your backends? Do we have to switch technologies to be able to use it? We know, again, that a lot of AI tooling sometimes is exclusive to Python, but it's not the case with MCP. Basically, you can write your MCP server and access existing MCP tools also through almost any popular language in there, whether it's TypeScript, Go, Java, Kotlin, .NET, whatever you're using, chances that there's already like an official support in the MCP SDK, both from a client and server standpoint. And now we also have like something important to call when calling about MCP is this notion of transport. So to be able to talk to MCP, to connect to an MCP server using a client, you have to decide which way you will be able to connect to the servers. So officially, there's two transports that are supported by the MCP SDK. So if you're working locally and, for example, in developer scenario, you want to connect to your server to check if everything's working well. If you have like strong security requirements where the data should live only like on your local machine or local network. So you can use STD.io basically to run the MCP server on your own machine and connect through like direct IO from your terminal. Or for production systems, most likely you'll be using like the streamable HTTP transport, so connecting through like remote endpoints. And that's mostly what we'll see in the upcoming example that we have. So now that we've talked about like the basics of MCP, Wasim, can you get like a tour of the different feature? I know that you explored many of these.
Yeah, sorry about my camera, but I hopefully you can still hear me. So yeah, we actually did explore multiple of these features. So the actual question is that what actually travels over the wire, and from the server side perspective, MCP exposes three main features, actually. We have the infamous tools. These are executable functions, things like create ticket, query a database. We have also resources, and these are passive data, things like reading a file or a log or a UI widget, for instance. And we also have prompts. And these are like reusable templates that guide the LLM. And on the other side, we have the client side, which is the agent. And in this case, MCP has capabilities like configuring routes, where the agent is allowed to look, and we have elicitation and sampling. But for this presentation, we are going to focus mainly on tools. But before we actually see some code, we have to talk about an important topic, which is security. And when you give an agent access to your database, you cannot rely on just trust me. MCP leverages the OAuth 2.1 authorization framework, and this ensures that we secure access to sensitive resources. And the agent does not just get a blank check, it actually gets authorized access to perform specific operations that are exposed by MCP server. Yeah. So I think I'm going to switch briefly to my screen to show you a simple hello world example of an MCP server, of a remote MCP server.
I'm sure knowing you, Wasim, it will be more than just a hello world.
I'm hoping to, yeah. So hopefully, yeah, you will be able to see my screen, sorry, when I share it, because I forgot to share it. That's my fault. This is it. Okay. Yep, so here I am in the AI travel agent sample that you will find in the AKM MS link that you all know by now. And in this particular repo, we have one implementation of an MCP server that's done in TypeScript. And this is basically what we call an echo ping testing server that we have in the repo. So for you to get started with building a simple MCP server with TypeScript, we will need to use the Node.js SDK. Obviously, if you are doing Python, you have an SDK, as Johan mentioned earlier. We have tons of other options, but for JavaScript, we will be using the Node.js SDK. Will be importing a few, sorry, excuse me, a few APIs and building blocks, I would say, and also some typings. And here we have, for the specific MCP server, we are just building an abstraction that we are calling Echo MCP server, but you don't have to. But in case you do, then you will be able to basically set up your server by registering a few handlers. And Johan will show you in the upcoming demo a much simpler version. But in this case, we're using a, how we say this, like a low-level way or APIs for constructing a HTTP or streamable HTTP server. And for this, yeah, we use our transport that Johan mentioned earlier, and then we connect to the server, and then we set up the handlers that we want to process or request we want to process. So in our case, since we are only interested in tools, I'll show you next a sample, an example of a tool. Then we will need to register two actions. One of them is listing the tools, and the other one is actually calling a specific tool. And this is, again, this is the low-level way of doing it. You don't have to do this. But in case you are dealing with security or ACL or access management, you would probably want to go this way, because then you will, for instance, have a more control over who can access a specific tool, and then you can filter out your tools. So in this case, we don't have any access management, so we just listing all the tools. And then the other request is actually calling the tool, then we'll filter out the tool. Again, if you're having any security, and where I recommend you actually set up some security mechanism here to check who has access to which tool. Then you can filter out by the tool and then execute it and return the result. So as far as the constructing the tools, I would say it's basic. If you have like a static list of tools, then you would have like an array or your tools, maybe your schema stored in some sort of database. Here we have a name, a description, and more importantly, an input schema, an input schema, and an output schema. These basically define the shape of your tool. And obviously, you need some logic. So in this case, we're just echoing back what the client is requesting. So now that you have your low-level MCP server built and the tool available, then you need to expose that MCP server through HTTP. So in this case, we're using Express.js, but you can use any other Node.js HTTP server, like Testify, for instance. We're exposing a few endpoints, a post MCP endpoint, and a get. And obviously, we delegate the incoming request to our MCP server to process. We also have like a legacy handler for get. In our case, they are not implemented, but we still keep them. And I mentioned earlier security. So in this case, we have what I call like low-level zero security using a basic authentication token, a JIT token. And this is all actually done through the Express.js middleware mechanism, not the Node.js, not the MCP server mechanism. So I think I covered it all, Johan. Let me know if I forgot something, but basically this is like the bare minimum that you have to do to implement to have a working MCP server, a remote MCP server using streamable HTTP. All right, so as I mentioned, this was a basic remote MCP server with a basic tool again. Now, yeah, let's level up a little bit. Johan will show us next how to build an actual single agent system using LangChain.js. Back to you, Johan.
Okay, thanks, Wassim, for explaining like all simply how you can configure like this MCP server. So now that we've seen how you can create like tools that can be used by LLMs, let's explore how these tools can be used like in a single agent system that we built with LangChain.js. So first we'll start with a demo so you can see better what we are talking about. So we've built this application for Cornerstone Burgers, a restaurant that wanted to build an agentic system on top of their existing API that they have to handle orders, because they wanted to be able to help customers to pass orders automatically and get the help of an agent to do that. So what we have in there, this is like the panel that they have like in the kitchen to be able to track the progress of the orders. And this is the agent system that they've built on top of their existing system. So first, let's log in with my personal account into there. So here we have like a classic chat interface to connect with the agent. So you can see on the left some of my chat histories. And now let's try to ask something. So actually what I want to have for today, let's say I want to have like an extra spicy burger with some mustard, and yeah, just don't ask, do your thing. And I want to see what the agent is capable of doing. So you've seen already that it's doing a few things in the back, doing some thinking, trying to do some back and forth, probably with the API. And yeah, you've seen that in real time, you've seen that there's a new order. So this is probably the one it just passed for me. So you can see I get like the ID of the order. So it ordered for me like a spicy jalapeno burger. So yeah, extra spicy with extra, again, mustard and yeah, more spice as I love it. So I get a picture of the burger, but more importantly, let's detail what happened behind the hood. So we've seen it done some thinking. We can get just like the debugging tool, what happened behind the agent's thinking process. So the first call was calling the LLM. So you can see that the output was, okay, the first thing is it wanted to know which kind of burgers were available. So calling the get burger tools. It called the get burger tools, responding with some JSON with the menu. Then the next action that it did is get the list of toppings, that's the extra that you can put on the burgers. So again, calling the tools and responding JSON with the menu. And the final one is placing the order, basically selecting the burger for me, the quantity and the extra toppings, extra mustard and things, before actually giving me that answer. So let's move on just to see a bit of the architecture to understand how we built this system. So we get the idea that we're talking about the restaurants. So let's have a look at the different components. So this restaurants already had its data inside a burger API. So this API exposes the menu, already connects to the user. They already have some of the images stored inside Azure. And they already have this dashboard just to see the live orders in the kitchen room. What we did in there is basically plugged in a new MCP server on the existing API. So we didn't want to revolutionize or rewrite everything in their backend. We just plugged into the existing business API that they had to serve the menu and place orders. And we added a front end with our agent that connects to this MCP server that basically exposes the burger API. So this is the high-level architecture that we have. Now, basically, let's move on to have a look at the agent part. Let's zoom in into the specific part. So if you're still wondering at this point of the event, what is an agent? It's very simple. Basically, an agent is simply a combination of an LLM with some tools. In our case, the tools will be provided by the MCP server. So in this application, we're using a single agent workflow. It's quite straightforward, but it still can achieve a great amount of tasks, as you've seen, even in some moderately complex scenarios. So the flow goes like this when calling the agents. So we have the input from the user saying, for example, like me, that you want to have like a spicy burger. So the LLM decides by itself which tool to call, the tools being provided by the MCP server. So the MCP server, as you've seen, answer with like the JSON result from the API. It gives some feedback to the LLM, which decides then the next action to do, either calling again another tool or ending the query by providing a final output, the response that we got in the end. So having done everything that I asked it for. So basically, simple agents workflow like this. Just use like the environmental feedback from the tools just to decide what to do. It does not follow like a predefined workflow. It's not like a set of tasks moving from one task to the next once it's done. It's basically determining like on the fly, depending on the request from the inputs, if it needs to call some tool, even calling one or more tools before providing like the final answer. Now, the more fun thing, let's have a look at the code that's behind to see how we implemented this with LangChain. So first, let's start with the MCP part. So I won't redo like all the basics of the MCP since Wasim already covered that. So this is here the different tools that we provided. Given that we already had the API, we applied like a very simple recipe that you may reuse, for example, if you want to do like a similar scenario, exposing a business API that you already have to an agent. So what we did is basically a pass-through between the MCP and our API. So we expose like a tool to get the list of burgers, calling just an endpoint that we already had on the API, calling a specific burger if you want to detail on one burger, for example, get the list of toppings and so on, like, for example, to get the list of order for a specific person, to place the order, the one that we used. And all of these, as you can see, it's mainly passed through to the API. There's no like deep logic in there. So if you want, you can like implement in your own MCP server, you can implement some deep logic. We'll have some example of that later. But for this one, it's just plain pass through to the API. So moving on to the repo, just to give you like an overview, I've told you that we have like many different components. So you can see in there all the packages from my repo. I've shown you some code from the Burger MCP in there. So once you have the tools to define the MCP server, here, basically, I'm just saying I want my new MCP server that I call it Burger MCP. I just iterate through all the tools that I just defined and register it with the server. So I just made a simple helper, so you don't have to do that since the tools are very straightforward. I just call, this is provided by the SDK. So if you don't have like very complex needs, like in this case, you don't want to have like a dynamic list of tools, you can just simply like have this static registration of all the tools that you want. And yeah, it will just expose that to the clients in there. And then something interesting, because we mentioned that MCP supports both a local with STD-IO transport and remote with HTTP transport. So I implemented both in this server. So I can use like the local STD-IO transport to run locally. So I have this local entry point in there. As you can see, I just get my MCP server definition and connect it to the STD-IO transport. But I can do exactly the same with the HTTP version. So I'm using Express, just like Wasim, to set up my HTTP server. And then again, I'm just from the very same MCP server definition, I connect it to the HTTP. So I can use local STD-IO when just debugging and everything locally. And then when I'm deploying, I will use the server entry point. If you look at my package.json, I basically have two scripts to run either the server, the one that will run in production, or locally to use my local one. So very simple thing. For the agent parts, what you've seen in the previous demo is basically two things. The agent API, so this is where the LangChain code lives, and the web app that connects to this API, that's basically just the chat interface that you've seen. What I show you is that we built also, just for debugging purpose, and because also it's easy, as you will see, to demonstrate, we built a CLI. So nothing fancy from the UI perspective. It's all the same LangChain code as the API, but run it from the CLI. So I'll use that first, so it's easier to understand. So it's an agent. It needs a prompt, a very detailed one to say, okay, it has access to some tools. What I want it to do is basically help a user to assist with managing the burger orders. So I give it a bunch of instructions in there. Now we'll skip just like all the CLI helper things to save and load the session and run straight to like the most important part, the agent stuff. So I'm using Azure as for the models in there. So we start with that. Here I'm basically using manage identity. So I don't want to use like API keys and make sure it's more secure to call my API. So I'm just setting up, this is provided by LangChain. So this is the regular OpenAI integration, just pointing it to my Azure endpoint. Here I've set up the model. Now I need to set up my MCP client. So this is the regular MCP SDK. I'm setting up my clients to connect through HTTP to my Burger MCP server. So, okay, this is the regular MCP SDK client connection. And then comes the LangChain part. To basically be able to consume an MCP server, you just have this single load MCP tools. You give it a name. So I will call it Burger. And a client. So this is my MCP client connecting to the tools that I've just shown. So just single line to connect an MCP client to LangChain. And then I can use the same thing that we've seen like in the first session, create agents. So I pass it the model, the MCP tool, my prompt, and then I'm good to go. So for the history in there, since it's a CLI agent, this one is just loading from a JSON local file. And yeah, let's try to call it. Actually, no, I didn't run like the agent, all my servers locally, and it takes a few minutes to start. So I'll just move on to explaining, to just show you that it's basically the same that's happening in the API. So using the UI that we've seen before. So you can see, besides like all the boilerplates to handle the HTTP stuff, we end up with the same thing, like instantiating the model. For the history, we have this additional Azure integration into LangChain to be able to save the session, so the thing that you've seen on the interface on the left in Cosmos database, so on Azure instead of a local file that I had. But the rest is exactly the same. I connect to my MCP server, I load the MCP tool, and I create the agent. So yeah, that's all you need to create like a single agent around like an existing API that you have. So it's basically, if we took a look at this example project, we had already some existing components. We added an MCP server on top of that and built an agent using LangChain on top of that. Security-wise, I didn't show you any specific code about that because we've kept like the existing built-in authentication that was already existing in the API. So our MCP server is just a pass-through to the API. It doesn't implement any special security layer stuff at this point. It's all handled at the API level. One thing that's worth mentioning is that this whole system is built using stateless API and tools. And this is allowing us to use full serverless hosting. So that means, especially for a restaurant where most of the orders comes during lunch and dinner time, for example, that it really scales well for the pikes that we can have during the calls when lots of folks makes orders at the same times, while keeping like a low cost when it's not used. It's only a very specific time in the day. So yeah. Well, you can already achieve a lot with just a single agent system. There are some more complex use cases where you might need to mix multiple agents at this point. And Wasim, I see that you have your camera back. And I believe you also have an example to demonstrate the system.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me well. So yeah, while you can actually, while you can use single agents to do so great stuff and solving a well-defined and well-scoped business need, then what happens when you need an agent that handles, let's say, billing, another that handles technical support, and another one that handles like manages travel planning, for instance. So that is where multi-agent orchestrations comes in. Yeah, so let's look at this very comprehensive real-world architecture that we built. This is a travel booking system, kind of like project. And on the right, those yellow boxes, we have a multi-agent system with 3 agents, 3 distinct and specialized agents. We have a customer query agent that handles the initial conversation. We also have a destination recommendation agent that knows about travel spots, for instance. And the third one is the itinerary planning agent that handles or books the logistics, for instance. These agents are orchestrated by workflow service using LangChain.js in this instance. But we also have other examples using Llama Index and the Microsoft Agent Framework. But for today, we're focusing on LangChain, JavaScript. And each agent is connected to an MCP client that connects to an MCP server, which gets specific access to specific tools. And we are also pulling telemetry via OpenTelemetry protocol and monitoring everything via the Aspire dashboard that we also ship with the repo, with the project. So this is a very modular system. If the destination logic changes, so then the itinerary agent doesn't break actually. And I forgot to mention that we have a beautiful Angular UI that communicates via server send events to get that real-time streaming experience. So I'm going to switch to my computer to show you the code. All right. So this is the actual repo. Again, you'll find the link in the event repo. Here we have our packages, and we have multiple packages. In our case, we have the LangChain.js one. The MCP servers are all in this folder, and the Angular UI. So let's actually start with the LangChain, the orchestration. So you've probably seen from previous presentations that Marlene and Johan mentioned, we talked about deep agent and all the orchestration that we can do with sub-agents. So this is actually what we're doing in this case. We have those multiple agents I mentioned earlier. They're all acting as sub-agents in our case because they all have specialized skill. And all of them, I'm not gonna go into detail, but basically they're all just following the same pattern, the name, system prompt, and description. And they're all them basically are constructed using the create deep agent constructor from LangChain.js. We are also giving them tools here in this case to the supervisor, just because our UI actually, I will show the UI by the way. We were able to dynamically actually choose which agent to enable or disable. So let me switch back to my browser here and show you. So this is the simple, classic simple chat experience, again, built with Angular. Let me step back. So here I have a predefined prompt for my travel booking system, and then we'll run the query actually and let it go through the LangChain and then the deep agent and then all the other sub agents. And again, what happens under the hood, which is the beauty of this architecture, the UI very simple, but the architecture is very modular. So all the sub agents that a user could select from here actually got constructed by the deep agent constructor and then passed over to the LangChain.js flow, which is here. This is where the orchestration happens. And basically this code here boils down to, hey, take the deep agent and stream all the events. And then we're able to filter out the event that we care about. And then either we process the events or we pass those events to the to our UI, our client in this case, which is Angular. Something I also should mention since this is a talk about MCP, we're using this create MCP tool, a helper from that actually we created based on the one from LangChain.js. So in our case here, we have a list of tools that are defined, we have a list of MCP server URLs and configuration that are defined in our environment variables. So we have the echo ping, we have the query customer query, itinerary planning, and all of them with the the actual URLs. And this configuration, then we pass this configuration to our MCP bridge helper class that we create. And using the load MCP tools that Johan showed earlier, we're able then to actually create a tools-like API that then we pass over to our deep agent. In this case, from the previous example here. So yeah, next, the MCP server itself is actually built on the same way that we showed in the first demo. You will recognize the Express implementation here. That's where is it? Here. Excuse me. Yep.
So that's the flow, and yep. So yeah, basically the implementations lies, that's like the agent. And on the MCP server themselves, something we highlighted in the architecture diagram earlier is that, and I didn't mention actually, is that in our case, we have multiple MCP servers, and each MCP server is implemented in a different programming language, which is again the beauty of this implementation of this architecture. So for instance, we have the customer query agent that's built entirely in .NET. I'm not a .NET expert, so I'm not going to go into more details in here. The destination recommendation is built in Java. Echo ping is TypeScript, that's the one we showed earlier, and the itinerary planning is built entirely in Python. So all of these MCP servers actually are deployed to Azure as containers, and they're also deployed locally here on my system using Docker, as you can see from the screen here. So yeah, they're all deployed and running, and when we switch back to the UI, by the way, we get our planning back from our agents. So they're all tied here from the UI and then passed to the deep agent constructor. Yeah, so hopefully the implementation is somehow clear. But if you wanna like take the repo and start everything locally, that's totally fine. We do support multiple providers. So we have, by default, we use Azure OpenAI, but we also support Docker models, Foundry local. We love Foundry local, GitHub, OLAM, and other stuff. So I'm not gonna share the implementation because Johan already shared how to bootstrap those LLMs and connect to those LLMs. But yes, so this is the demo, and one last thing is the dashboard, the Open Telemetry dashboard using Aspire that I mentioned earlier. That's also running locally here, but it's also deployable to Azure on container apps. So this is a great way for you to trace issues and the calls that are made by the LLMs throughout your multi-agent system. All right, so if we switch back to our slide deck. Sorry. So you might be wondering if this like this giant super why not just use a giant single agent as Johan mentioned earlier. So the problem is that won't probably work, or if it works, it probably will fail at some point, because I believe that LangChain actually, like the LangChain the company, recently did a study where their conclusion was actually that a single agent system really starts struggling as you add more tools. So if you use one giant agent to solve all these business processes which are different, you might end up having like less reliable single agents. So this is why we need to implement multi-agent systems or MES, because as you can see from the definition, it's built for that. It's well suited. It's better suited for complex business need because it's a system that is combined or composed with multiple autonomous and, more importantly, specialized agents that interact together to achieve a common objective and in a shared environment. Environment is really important because they all need to have the same context. So yeah, so that's why you actually need MES. Also from the MCP server's perspective, we have the implementation that we showed earlier with different programming languages, which is great as well. So I'm not gonna add more details to this. So next is that we need security, Johan, right? For this.
Definitely. Especially since you have to connect like all these components in the system. I think it must be a nightmare to secure, right?
Yeah. So the thing is, like, as you move to toward production, we have to revisit security, and we think of it in terms of levels. So level 0 would be to have like a simple authentication with using the JOT token, as we showed earlier. So basically, just to ensure that the person talking to the agent is who they are, they say they are. And level 1 would be to add authorization, and this is basically, think of it as, can this user actually perform this action? And then level 2 is like the gold standard, which is OAuth 2.1. This is the official MCP recommendation for securing interactions between client and server. So we highly recommend you following the specs for this. So I think we mentioned a bit of security. So now let's bring it all together, Johan, and back to you.
So what we've seen with these different demos for single agent system and the one that was presented with all these multi-agents communicating together to handle like a more complex task. So what we've seen at the center is MCP. So MCP is really like the cornerstone of the agentic system. This is the key that allow like to interconnect your data, your tools with your agents. And we've seen that in both examples. So this is really why we call this talk like MCP in action, because yes, it's about agents, but what provides the agents the skills to do actual things with your data, with your systems, is MCP behind the hood. So we've seen also that in the first demo, single agents can be built very quickly with LangChain.js, but they work best with like well-defined scenarios, like the restaurants, when the domain is contained. In this case, like, the burger restaurant. But when you know basically what to expect, if there's no surprise in the middle, single agents can do these kind of things. If you don't have like too many tools to handle, it works well enough. And you can do that with like very simple API, the create agent one that you've seen multiple times at this point. Now, on another hand, multi-agents are really more suited when you need more complex use case, when the domain can change and evolve over time, like the one that Wasim just presented you. But for this, the LangChain platform, and I'm saying platform because it's more than just the LangChain library itself. It combines with like the deep agents, or you also have like the choice to use like LangGraph supervisor library to handle this more complex use case and more complex scenarios. I believe, Wasim, that you use like both of these tools. You've shown us like the deep agent one in this demo, but I remember that at some point you also experimented with LangGraph supervisor.
Yep. So actually, we used both implementations, and the deep agent one was excellent for us because in our scenario, we wanted the agent to really take this like deep thinking to get the result back. So we stick with the deep agent one. All right. So I think we've reached the end. So if you want to dive deeper, join us on the Microsoft Foundry Discord. Scan this QR code to get access to the community, the code samples for both the burger app and the travel agent demo. And I also want to mention that this technology is moving super fast, and MCP is becoming the standard for how we connect AI to real world. So we can't wait to see what you build with it. And thank you very much for your time. And back to you, Julia and Dan.
Well, thanks, Wasim and Johan. Amazing stuff. It's great to see what LangChain.js provides for extending agents using MCP, and really good job walking us through, the tooling aspect of that and what MCP brings to the table. I also love how, you can integrate it, as you mentioned, with Microsoft Foundry, Foundry Local, and more. So a lot of great stuff there. So Julia, we still have one exciting last piece here. Why don't you tell us more about what we're going to wrap up with?
Yep. So first off, Dan, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't mind having an agent order a burger for me. So thank you so much, Johan and Wasim, for such an incredible demo. So far, we've seen several great demos up to this point. We had the Java Sales Analyst agent from Madeline. We've seen the burger ordering agent, which shows a good use case for a single agent. And then we've also seen the AI travel agent for a multi-agent scenario. If you missed anything, or if you want to go back and have a deeper look into the code yourself, there's the link that we have on the screen, and we've shared it multiple times on the chat. So definitely click on that and you'll be able to see all the resources that we've shared so far. So as we approach the end of this event, we promised a special session for you all, and here we are ready to deliver on that promise. So I'll now invite our panel hosts. We have Chris and Gwen, together with our incredible guests, Hunter and Sydney, all the way from the LangChain team for the panel discussion. Welcome, guys.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? Thank you, Julia and Dan, for that awesome intro. And thanks to the entire team, actually, for putting this together. I know it's been a lot of work from all sides, and also to the LangChain team. Thank you for the partnership. I know it's been probably a crazy couple of months for y'all, more than a couple of months. Yeah, I remember, Sydney, we connected around launch time, and yeah, you were busy. so thanks so much for being here. Just a quick intro. My name is Gwen. I work on our Python advocacy team. I have my colleague Chris here. Chris, you want to give a quick intro? Oh, I think your mic might be on mute or something. I can circle back in a second. But Sydney, Hunter, how about we do a round of intros? Sydney, you want to tell us who you are, what you do at LangChain?
Yeah, happy to. So I work on the Python open source team at LangChain, primarily on our kind of agents and middleware, but I also work on LangGraph, which is the tool that we use under the hood for LangChain.
Awesome. Yep. And Hunter?
Yeah, and then I'm Hunter. I work on the TypeScript open source team, focus on a lot of integrations, also some of the agent stuff. Talked with most of the folks, Marlene, Johan, Wasim here, so great to talk everything LangChain.
It's awesome. I'm really digging your custom neon lights in the background.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet, no?
So sick. Also, your camera quality. I'm a big nerd of like camera stuff, so we can talk about this later. hey, Chris, are you back?
Hey, folks. Yeah, hopefully you can hear me now, right?
Yes. You want to give us a quick intro?
Yeah, totally. So my name is Chris Noring. I'm an advocate here at Microsoft and stoked to be a colleague of Gwen's. Super stoked to have you both here, Sydney and Hunter. Yeah, so we look forward to picking your brains a bit.
Awesome. Intros out of the way. Let's kick it off. We have a couple of questions we want to chat, and if we have more time, maybe we'll get one for the audience at the end. We'll see. But Chris, you want to kick things off with the questions?
Yeah, totally. And I think as a big fan of LangChain, I think this one is close to my heart. So I'm kind of curious, what are your favorite new features of this version 1?
Yeah, certainly. I can take this one. So we released LangChain and LangGraph v1 in October on LangChain's kind of official 3rd birthday. Very exciting. I would say there are a couple things that I'm super excited about. The first is our new Create agent pre-built. So for kind of OG users, they'll know that we had a previous version of that in the original LangChain, and then Create React agent in LangGraph. And this is kind of our battle-tested new version of an agent builder. And then kind of adding on to that, we've added middleware support to our agents. And so at any point in that kind of core model and tool calling loop that defines an agent, you can inject middleware to run custom logic. So I think we might talk a little bit more about that later, but that's things like human in the loop intervention for tool calling, or PII redaction, and then even things that just help with your agent's robustness. So things like model fallbacks or tool retries, things like that. So very excited about kind of the extensibility that provides. And then secondarily, in LangChain v1, we introduced what we're calling standard content blocks. So one of the greatest value propositions of LangChain is that you can build applications with AI in a kind of provider agnostic way. You could be streaming from any number of providers and kind of have a standard data format to work with. And so those standard content blocks really just solidified that benefit of LangChain.
Nice. Sounds like a lot of good things coming. Gwen, do you want to take the next question, perhaps?
Yeah, of course. So the word of the year is probably agent, maybe MCP. I think agent really tops it. And then, going into the new year, we're probably going to see a bunch of innovation with agents from a bunch of different teams and companies, right? But it's quite clear that this is a focus for LangChain. And V1's is centered around building agents, developing agents like more straightforward and simpler, right? Like you had just mentioned, Cindy, you have like this new create agent functionality and such. But for devs who have been using LangChain already, there's a little bit of maybe like a mind shift or like a workflow shift or something, or maybe like a philosophy there that needs to change to sort of take advantage of all this new functionality. What would you say this new approach unlocks for them, or what about V1 is sort of fundamentally better with, or like how to build agents or how to approach it?
Yeah, I think I could take this one on. So I mean, there were like quite a few like endemic features that we introduced, so a lot of changes to LangChain. Like we pretty much reinvented the entire package as a part of V1. There was a lot of like existing patterns that we were originally experimenting with, and those were kind of like the basis for our learnings for what eventually became LangGraph, and then V1, or LangGraph, and then what we introduced in V1. So some of those patterns have kind of fallen out of date. We found success with this inside of LangGraph, kind of for those more embedded into the LangChain ecosystem. We had a pre-built pattern called create React agent. It's effectively the same working basis as the create agent that we have in LangChain v1. It was built using LangGraph, so durable execution, reliability. Again, those are based off of the learnings of LangChain v0. So like you ask, how do we think about like where do we see the agent landscape going? How are people building with agents? I think it's like the create agent pattern is like a reflection of all of our learnings built in to something that developers can engage with. If you had asked the difference between like what is the difference between this agent pattern that we already had inside of LangGraph and this one, I think Sydney touched on it. It's middleware. We've seen it's been out for about a month now, this new pattern that we've introduced, and we've seen a lot of success with it. There's a lot of interesting and creative approaches for people as they're building agents. Middleware just enables a lot for them.
Awesome, thanks. I like that I mean, it seems like a lot of the work from the team is centered around just how people were building with it in the first place, and like, all right, let's just go and make it work that way. I like that. I like when you're clearly listening to the community, and like I am someone who's relatively newer to knowing about LangChain, but I get that feeling from y'all just from like the way you share, the way you talk about things. Just it very much feels like you care about people's feedback. So I just want to say I appreciate that, and I appreciate that approach.
It's one of the like beautiful things about the open source community. We like get to collaborate with people from all over, but I think get really an incredible amount of input on like what people are trying to build and what's hard to build and how can we make that easier. So like Hunter said, hopefully the middleware helps kind of solidify some of those common patterns that we see folks wanting to use, and then also is super extensible and allows people to kind of build in their own application specific directions.
That's great.
I'll add on to that. Like I think one of the core tenets of like how we approach open source is the people building agents are the users, and they have their own unique needs. They have their own unique ideas. I mean, we could go off and build like our own super opinionated agent abstraction that no one's going to use. which that doesn't sound very fun. So we always keep our ear to the ground. That's one of the big tenets of how our team operates.
Chris, you want to keep us going with the next one?
Yeah, absolutely. So this question is centered around your long-term fans, I guess, right? People who have been building with LangChain from day one, or at least for a few months or even a few years. So for them who already have apps and thinking about, oh, this new version 1, that looks really sweet, I want to try that. Is there like an upgrade path, or how should they think about moving their pieces into this new V1, all the new goodness, if you will?
Yeah, we do have a very robust migration guide. I can link that. So I think the migration from LangGraph v0.x to LangGraph 1.0 is quite easy. Basically, the only breaking change is that we deprecated Create React Agent in favor of the more robust Create Agent in LangChain. And then I think the most impactful thing for users migrating from LangChain 0.x to 1.0 is the fact that our namespace has shrunken in size. And specifically, we looked to kind of refine exactly what we were seeing the most usage of, and really focus on making those utilities good and up to date and kind of well maintained. And we still republished all of those other previous utilities that were in kind of the, I think, admittedly bloated LangChain namespace after 3 awesome years of development as LangChain Classic. So those are still certainly available for folks. And, if we see patterns over there that are still quite popular, we'll pull them into the main package. But yeah, and migrating from Create React Agent to Create Agent is actually quite easy. I think for a lot of people, it's just adds functionality with Middleware.
Cool. That sounds really good. And I think we were sharing also a link to that migration guide in the chat. So definitely check that out. So I guess follow-up question on that from me. Could I mix and match between the LangChain Classic and the new way of doing it? Or do you recommend just going, straight for the new one? Or
yeah, you can mix and match, which is kind of what our intent was with republishing LangChain Classic as a fully separate package. We've seen different ways of handling big migrations. So for example, like Pydantic republished the V1 namespace as a part of V2 so that people could do that gradual migration. And we figured just being able to pin separate versions of packages is kind of the easiest way to help with that gradual migration.
Nice. Sounds really, really good from an upgrade standpoint. So Gwyn, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, and we'll make sure to share all these resources that are mentioned in the chat. So don't worry about missing anything out. Oh, you've released a couple of things. I want to talk about deep agents, and this is going to be a two-part question. But I want to start off by asking, what problem does deep agent solve, or what caused you to say this is something we need to build and make available?
Yeah, I could take this on. I think part of the original impetus for deep agents is what we're starting to see is a pattern of people being super opinionated about how agents are built. I think if you roll back the tape 6 months ago, I think people were I need absolute controllability if I'm taking an agent to production. Deep agents, I think, is a reflection of maybe there are a bunch of pre-built patterns that we want to have as a part of our agent. I think Claude Code is a really good example of that. It was kind of part of the Claude Code. It was originally meant as a coding agent, but it's been adapted to all these other and different things. And I think deep agents is a reflection of we're going to go experiment with these different behaviors, see what works really well across a wide number of use cases. So we're really excited about deep agents in that sense, because we're starting to see a lot of success with how file systems get used, and a lot of these patterns that are really suited for agents, and making that general across a whole number of applications.
Yeah, I can add a little bit more here. We're kind of marketing this new pattern of LangGraph as the agent runtime, and then LangChain as an agent framework, which is a very familiar term in this space, and then deep agents as an agent harness, which, as Hunter has touched on, certainly leans into those like well-researched opinions that we're expressing. And so that's like, kind of represents the levels of control, right? Like if you need super fine-grained control over agent orchestration and behavior, great, go to LangGraph. If you want a super quick start with power in middleware, LangChain's your go-to. But if you want really capable agents out of the box, specifically for those like long-running cases, Deep Agents is a great way to get started, and you can kind of count on our abundance of like research and experimentation to guide some of those like best context engineering practices, namely things like file systems as places to like offload and store context, and then automatic summarization when conversations get long and things like that.
And it's worth pointing out too that Deep Agents, like if you dive into the code, what it is pretty much is create agent and then a bunch of pre-built middleware that we have that achieve the purpose of Deep Agents. So totally reasonable to, I think, copy those down. Deep Agents is pretty minimal, I think, compared to the rest of LangChain and LangGraph. Experiment with those middleware. And again, I think that just like really echoes the power of middleware, the power of create agent, and how we're using that inside of Deep Agents.
That what you had just mentioned, Sydney, actually answers my second part, which was going to be if you could just help us out with a bit of a decision tree there of like when to use what. But I quite like that explanation. It was pretty simple to be okay, use this. If you need this, use that. And I also get that it's sort of changing, right? This concept of a harness, I think I first started seeing it maybe a couple months ago, if that. And I'm sure people will be opinionated and say, it's probably not the best word, let's change it. And there'll be another word, and maybe another thing you need to build in a couple of months. But just to kind of, a follow-up question here is, what does building something or keeping up to something and like on this team at this company look like, just with the pace of things? Like how do you know when, oh, like this has legs, we should probably look into this, versus like, oh, this is just trend of the week or something like that?
That's a great question. I think one of my favorite things about LangChain, and maybe, I don't know if a lot of people know this, we have an open source team, which Hunter and I are on. And then we also have an applied AI team that works to build AI applications that, sometimes get incorporated into our commercial products, sometimes get incorporated into our open source, and is really kind of at the forefront of like what is new with things and how can we use LangChain tools to build with those new concepts. And so I think the kind of marriage between those two teams is really how we do a good job at keeping up with things and sussing out what is here to stay and what's just like a flash in the pan. And yeah, so that's my answer. And our applied AI team and open source teams are kind of collaborating on Deep Agents right now, as an example.
Very cool. So you're not just going on like LinkedIn and seeing what people are talking about. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. It's good to know that's not the approach.
I mean, it's certainly good inspiration sometimes, right? Like I think there is, you guys put out a lot of great educational content, but definitely worth having a dedicated team to kind of develop applications.
That's awesome. I know, Chris, you wanted to ask a little bit about LangGraph, right?
Yeah, totally. So thanks for that. Yeah. So I mean, LangGraph is one of those things that people think about LangChain when they want to build agents. But I guess my question is, look into the future. Like, how does LangGraph fit into the old, LangChain agents? How should developers think of it, as an abstraction, especially with complex workflows and things like that?
Yeah, I think, like, to answer that question, I think like the observation that I think we've had is like industry trends is like where AI is sort of like falling at the cards is there's an idea of workflows and then there's an idea of agents. And agents, really all they are is a complex type of workflow where you're calling an LLM, you're calling a tool in a loop, like that. You could represent that as a workflow. So we kind of take the approach that like LangGraph is sort of the bedrock of like that workflow. We call it like a workflow orchestrator or an orchestration engine. That's what Create Agent is built on. So kind of couples the idea that agents are kind of just advanced workflows. So there's LangGraph, there's Create Agent, and then Deep Agents, which is the agent harness. There's kind of like this 3-tier architecture that we have. So where LangGraph fits into it all, it's it's super critical. I think the like the real application where you need to go down and do state graph is maybe you're toying with like a different agent architecture, or you're looking to build like a super complicated workflow. Because LangGraph, it has a bunch of features built in that sort of play to the demands of agents and workflows as a whole. So that's kind of the direction that we give. When we're thinking about how we build agents, we almost always reach for LangGraph just because it's been kind of the perfect toolkit for all of the cases that we run into. So yeah.
Nice. That's a good explanation. So Gwyn, do you want to take it away? Maybe one final question here.
Yeah, one final question is, and if we have more time, I have a fun question, but we'll do this one first. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you wish we had asked you about LangChain?
I don't know if you have anything, Sydney, but I got my answer.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, it would. I wish people asked us more, like, how can we get in touch with the open source team? Like, as you're building agents, maybe not even with LangChain, but just like, I want to bend someone's ear who is playing with agents all day, or they're running into issues with the LangChain. How do they get in touch? How do they get involved? The answer there is, like, we have a really great community Slack channel that you can go join, and we're all pretty active in there. That you can go ping us, you can pull us into a DM and just talk all things agents, what you're running into with LangChain. Like kind of what we were talking about before, the basis of like how our open source operates is what are the challenges that people are running into when agent building. So we want to make sure that we always have like open feedback lines there.
Yeah, I think I'll bounce off what Hunter said. I think just learning about kind of the use cases, especially like, pushing the boundary use cases that folks have, really help us develop better tools. And I'll also say we've been investing a lot in our documentation recently. One of the things we rolled out with V1 was consolidated docs across all of our open source packages and our commercial tooling as well, and then across languages. And so, we're seeing a lot of demand for things like our multi-agent guide, which we're rolling out soon, or guardrails guidance. And so just getting feedback on like, what do you want to see documented and how can we help with that is also valuable.
To sort of add to that, really like all the videos that y'all are putting out. They're really great. And like you're doing a bunch of them. And I feel like they're oddly like really targeted to what I'm looking for. Like I'll be thinking about something and I'll see you sitting, you retweeted something. I'm like, oh, exactly. So keep up the good work. That I know it's a lot of work, but I think it's quite awesome to get that content straight from the team building a lot of stuff. I think that's pretty cool. All right, so I've been told I have a few minutes for my fun question, and this question comes from a question that I asked my team yesterday. But don't worry, it's nothing difficult. I just want to know, new year, new year, new me, all that kind of stuff, right? What is something you want to learn next year? And it doesn't have to be tech related. It could be like woodworking, or I don't know, how to make custom neon signs or something like that, right? And Chris, I'm going to ask this to you too. Actually, Chris, let's start. Do you have anything you want to learn in the new year? Did you, Chris? Did you hear that?
Yeah, sorry, you were cutting up. Could you? Oh
yeah, just what are you excited to learn in the new year? Anything. Doesn't have to be tech related.
Oh, me?
Yes.
I'm always trying to learn more, and I have to admit, I'm very interested in getting deeper into V1. Right? It's just out, and with all the things going on around the year, you have to learn something new every week. And just knowing me being a long time, fan of LangChain, I definitely want to get my hands dirty on the V1 just to see how much better it is, because it has to be. Right, coming from this team, I mean, and I just want to say also that I'm super stoked to have met your core team in London when all you guys came over, or Harrison was coming over. So I'm super happy to have been part of that. And I actually have a little question for you all, a fun question. Hopefully we have time for this. Is it true that what Harrison said, that you guys actually built deep agents through a weekend hackathon? Did it actually just take you guys like 2 days to build it?
I know Harrison wrote the initial draft quite quickly. I'm not sure. I recall seeing quite a quick turnaround though on the initial version. So I would say that's probably true. Yeah,
Very impressive.
I can give a less technical answer to the what do I want to learn next year. Man, all of my friends and even some family members have been really getting into knitting and crocheting. I know it's like a little bit behind the like classic COVID arc of getting into that, but I think the reason that I'm most excited, I'm hopefully going to learn how to knit, is that it brings people so much joy to be like wearing and using things that are you know, just like homemade and like have a lot of thought put into them. And I think increasingly so, I'm like getting more value out of that general act in my personal life. So very excited to kind of go on a sub craft arc and try to get better at knitting.
I love that. My mom recently made like custom sweaters for her chickens. I'll send you a photo. They're pretty sick. Hunter, do you have anything you're looking forward to learning in the new year?
I'll give something quasi technical, but I don't think it's yeah, it's not like knitting. I think my dad, he was an electrical engineer, and like he would always like try to do like these breadboard projects and things like that, and I just never got it. I could understand computers a lot more than I could understand electronics. So you know, might pick up my chops there again, see if I can do some interesting stuff there.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I mean, big thank you to both of you for spending some time here with us. I know it's packed time. Hopefully you are taking some time off in this holiday season, taking a break before the chaos resumes. But yeah, any final comments or anything you'd like to say before we end here?
Just want to say thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure talking with you all, seeing what all you are all building with LangChain. And like I mentioned, if you have feedback for V1, feedback for LangChain, let us know. GitHub, Slack, you know where to find us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's great to chat kind of all things open source and AI and agents, and I'm excited to see what the like, you know, AI word of the year is for 2026.
Yeah, we should have some kind of like list of possibilities, and I bet it's probably not even going to be anything that someone thinks of. Totally, like, I don't know. We'll see. But thanks, team. I'm gonna invite Dan and Julia back on to close us out here.
Sounds great.
All
Thanks.
Right.
Awesome. So that was such a great discussion. And one of my key takeaways was how LangChain values the open source community. So I think this is a great chance for all your voices, suggestions, ideas to be incorporated in the evolution of the platform. So Dan, I'm gonna throw one back at you. What was your key takeaway from today's event?
You know, I like some of the questions in the chat. And I won't call out anyone in particular, but I just like the key takeaway for me is how community is so important for helping us all learn. And, you know, we can work in isolation, but it's so great to learn from what others are doing and, you know, challenges they're having, successes they're having, whatever, you know, like the Fireside chat, for example. Hearing those stories is amazing. So that's not really a technical thing, I realize, but I think it's just one of those important things. And oddly enough, it'll tie into what I'll probably mention here in a moment anyway. But yeah, what about you, Julia? Did you have a favorite aspect?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just the whole simplicity that comes into building agents. I mean, when you think critically about starting a project and building AI agents, it might feel like it's quite a lot at first, but once you start looking at frameworks like LangChain, you just feel how simplified the whole process has been made. So I think that was really, really good for me to learn from this event. And so that's a wrap on this edition of the OSS AI Summit. And a quick reminder is that you can get all the information, all the demos, all the resources that have been presented so far through the link that you see on the screen. So at this point, you might be thinking you've attended the summit, you've hopefully loved what you've seen and heard, and you probably want to stay connected. You want to be part of the conversation. So Dan, where should our viewers go next?
Yeah, so on the subject of community, and I promise I didn't actually mean to answer the question and then lead into community, but if you are interested in getting involved with other people, asking questions, learning from others, all those type of things, sharing, definitely join the Microsoft Foundry community Discord. There'll be a direct link to it from the main. You'll notice we've been sharing this main link the entire time. We wanted to just have one key takeaway for y'all. So definitely join that, though, because it's a great way to learn from others and really, get part of a community and see what's going on. And who knows, maybe that's where the 2026 word of the year will come from. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to take a vote on what is that word going to be. But I'm kind of with Gwen. I think it'll probably be something we haven't even thought of, given the pace of everything. But we're at the end, as you mentioned, Julia. So just a couple of quick thanks. Thank you to everyone, first off, for making time to attend. I know you're all busy, have other things to do, but we hope this was valuable for you. And we're hoping to do other OSS AI summits on some other topics in the future. So you'll have to let us know if you feel that'd be valuable. But I want to quickly thank our special guests. So thank you, Rati. Thank you, Sydney and Hunter. We really appreciate you coming on and joining us. And then, of course, thanks, Marlene, Wasim, Johan, Gwen, and Chris, and Julia, the best of all, for helping out with the event. And behind the scenes, I want to thank Anna real quick because she's been driving all the StreamYard stuff. So thank you, Anna, for that. So thanks, everyone. Enjoy the holiday season wherever you are in the world, and we will catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find our survey link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.